Photography has changed. The instrument has changed, the market has changed, the appreciation has changed, the focus, the interest has changed. We're all dinosaurs. My name is Chester Higgins, Jr., and I'm a photographer. I'm from Alabama. The reason I picked up the camera was out of love, to give a visual expression of my love of my relatives and my people. But living in the 60s and feeling compelled to be a part of the civil rights movement and seeing the visual travesty that was happening by the local media, it caused me to hitch up my passion for the love of my people to a political agenda. I had to create. I felt the urge, I felt the need, I felt the responsibility to use this camera to create these authentic moments visually. I've used the camera as my passport, essentially, to not only to capture and bring an authentic light to the domestic reality of the African American, but also to capture and to reaccess for myself the imagery of the African, the continental African, and the history of people of African descent. Well, in photographing people, Cornell Coppola says something to me, and he says, you know, you have to like people and let them know that you like them. You have to find a way to integrate that into your own personality. And for me, I do love people. And I've learned a couple of things. One is that in photographing people, you should not have judgment. Because fundamentally, I believe that at any given moment, people are doing the best that they can. You may think it should be different. If they had your skills, they may. But that's not the point. You're there to document what is. Secondly, I do not take away their right to say no. You enter in somebody's space and you have to acknowledge their space. And you have to let them know that you're not their enemy, you're their friend. And that it is their space and they have a right to say, no, you can't make this picture. And I have found that when you don't try to take away people's right to say no, you have less resistance. And finally, what I've tried to set up as a situation of formula is this, that I want to be the person who is a friend, who happens to have a camera. And the camera gives me a chance to have a second memory. That I see it with my eyes, I experience it with my senses. But the camera gives me the opportunity to have a second memory. A memory that would not disappear because the body disappears. It would not disappear because the mind goes weak. And it would always remind me that those other lives that I saw and touched, the things that have informed my experience, but also made my life better. And those are the monuments that of those relationships and those moments is what will survive me, that will say who I am and what my experience has been. The authentic image of people of African descent is blank. I'm not saying that there is not an image, but the image has been an image that has been imposed essentially upon us by people who don't like us. So the image we have gotten is a distorted image. And even sometimes when we ourselves try to produce images, we're producing subconsciously out of what we're exposed to, that so many of us still add to that distortion. And that distortion is what we call self-hate, and people don't even realize they're doing it because we are what we consume. And if you consume bad food, there's only so much your body can do with that. So if you consume visually bad information, distorted information, violent information about yourself, you have a choice to either become that which you consume, or when you feel a breath of fresh air, you turn in that direction. And I've always been turning into that direction of fresh air, looking for the elements that have been hidden under the radar that should be on that canvas. What's important about light when I make a photograph is drama. How light wraps around something, how it contrasts something, how it accentuates something. For me, I say light is my mistress. One day I was meeting with Sarkowski. He wanted to look at my work and he decided that there's a couple of prints he wanted to have in the collection. And he said to me, he says, you know, what I don't see in your work is the time of day. I said, huh. To me, that was a very seminal moment because it made me pay closer attention to light and see that light speaks. She speaks so many different times of day in so many different ways. The light is the modifier of the subject. And I have the choice of how I want to play that modification because I know where it is. And I know if I should change myself in position, relation to it, if I should change the subject or use it as it is. But I'm constantly aware of what it is and what she's doing, the light, my mistress. Most times it's just me and the camera, but sometimes I have to, like a sculptor, construct the light. And I take that a step further when I go abroad. Sometimes I work in Ethiopia. I've made a mobile New York City fashion studio with high-risers, backdrops, diffusers, aluminum battery strobes. And I go village to village. I have 2 cars. One car is full of nothing but lighting equipment. The other car is full of camping and kitchen equipment. So I spend 6 weeks doing this, traveling from different places, camping out, making essentially a visual census of a certain kind of person that's representative of the people whom they live with among in different villages. I'm interested in the spirit that exists in everything because all things exist at the pleasure of the spirit. So whenever I photograph a thing or a person, what is visually apparent to me is only the beginning reference point. What I like to do, essentially, I like to dive right into it. To dive behind the face, behind the facade, behind the moment, to capture the thing that is universal in that person, in that thing, that is riding on spirit time. So in some ways, I relish being what I call a spirit catcher, because that's what I'm after. All this other stuff is fine. You like it, you know, I know how to make it, but what I'm after is something that maybe you don't even realize what it looks like inside of you. But that's what I'm after. I'm after what I call the signature of the spirit.